What you're saying here with your T-shirt that says jail is failing.
Yep. I saw the undercovers across the road. My girlfriend goes, I think they've pegged you. Something just overcame me. I said, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
I gave her the wallet, the phone and kissed her and said, I'm going to give myself up. In Goulburn, I was in there with Glover, the granny murderer.
Yeah.
And, that yard, I think that there was 40 blokes in there and they killed 65 people.
Yeah.
And I look back now and think, fuck, I was just a kid from the suburbs smoking pot.
Yeah.
How do you get there? There is people that fucking should never get out. We still let them out. The average prison sentence in New South Wales is 8 months. 8 months is the average sentence. So they're not Ivan Milats.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And any one night at the moment, there's about 12,500 people in prison today.
In New South Wales.
In New South Wales. Yet 19,000 people will cycle through every year. 10,000 of those will go to homelessness. People didn't know. People went, it's the Northern Beaches. But the highest uptake of people in juvenile detention or prison in New South Wales was from the Northern Beaches.
Right.
On any Saturday night on the Northern Beaches at any one time, I got 5 cars babysitting, because people don't realise, he said, as soon as I have an interaction with a child under 16, I become, speaking
responsible.
of his, and I can't let them go until I hand them over to a responsible person. Yeah. So he said, I've got 8 cars on the beaches and 5 of them, so real crimes, the things that we want police to come to, they can't get to them.
The I Catch Killers podcast was a fresh start for me, as I left policing behind and started a new life. Over the years, we've laughed together, cried and shared some powerful moments. Welcome to I Catch Killers.
Claude Robinson, welcome back to I Catch Killers.
Thanks, Gary.
Now, in part 1, Claude, we got a very interesting take on your life. And I got to say, I've just been thinking about the chaos of your life. The chaos of your life when it goes down a path that you're dependent on drugs. You did 7 years in prison, caught for different things, made a lot of stupid decisions in life. And I look at it the way that your life is, the way we left you, in and out of jail, in there and just not learning, still your addictions carrying through the prison system. I got to say, from my point of view, it looked like you're going down a one-way street. You're either going to end up dead or in prison for the rest of your life.
It's funny you say that, because that was a pivotal moment. I think, we left the last time my dad had died at Goulburn, and I was up for parole. Yeah. And I was going to Rainbow Lodge, where I now work. And I remember that last 6 months coming up, that I'd got my parole, I got the date, and I was getting some inheritance. And the insanity was, I thought this, because through all that chaos, I still had this belief that a big bag of money or a big bag of dope would fix it all. Yeah. And I thought and I was right. This was it. I was going to get out.
So the big bag of money to get the big bag of dope, or the big bag of money to invest wisely and become a citizen?
Yeah, probably not. Probably not invest wisely. I think when I was coming out, I don't even think I thought about it that much. Yeah. I just thought this is it.
I'm wondering, when you've gone through that, like you did 3 years in Goulburn, you were assaulted a prison officer in Cessnock. You're not having a good time in Goulburn. Goulburn's not a fun place. It's a horrible place.
Yeah.
So you were what at this age? You were 30?
36 now.
36?
Yep.
Do you have moments of reflection when you're sitting there? Because you've got a lot of time to think when you're in prison. Do you have moments and think, why has my life gone down this path?
Not at that stage. I think I was so focused on that I was getting my inheritance, that this was going to change everything, and still in huge...
Change everything as in give you access to drugs? What was the change?
Well, I think still then I was in a lot of denial, and I still thought I could use manageably if I had enough access and I did it the right way.
Right. So I've got money, I can still have my drugs, I don't have to be a criminal, and I'll live
Well, not do crime that I'm going to... Not desperate crime.
Okay.
Insane.
Yeah.
So, I leave there and I end up at Rainbow Lodge, and 2 weeks later and at this stage I'm still on, I think I'd reduced, I was on like 75 mils of methadone because they wouldn't let me on parole without still being on methadone. 2 weeks after that, I get my... inheritance, and 5 weeks later I'm back in prison But that last day, you know, and I sat in the Astoria with my girlfriend at the time, and I still think, you know, I thought I was a good bloke because she was normally worked and she didn't have to because I had all this money.
Yeah.
And I just shot it all up on coke and heroin. And I remember the insanity of going, you know, when it gets to 30, 20, 10, we'll
This is
stop.
the money.
Yeah,
Right.
going
Yeah.
down. You know, we'll stop. Like, we'll
Yeah.
you know. And what happened was I woke up the last day, and it had all gone. And I was that crazy that I jumped a cab with her because I just thought I need to get a shot of heroin to work out what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
Just insane. So I jump a cab. I go to the Leichhardt Social Security office where I'm registered at because I'd been at Rainbow Lodge. And I'm that insane, I believe, that I go up to the counter and I said to my girlfriend, I'll get a counter check because I'll tell them I'm on the run, which I was at this stage, from parole. And they'll give it to me because otherwise I'm going to have to rob someone. And I thought
That's your logic.
that was my logic. And so I go up to the guy, and you can still get counter checks in those days. And, you know, he said no. And I just jumped the counter and, you know, hit him and robbed him.
Right.
And don't worry about prison, the airport. Centrelink know more about you than fucking anyone. It was the most and there was camera, like, it was just so desperate. And I knew I was in trouble because as we were running out with this guy's wallet and phone, my girlfriend, who unfortunately is still up the cross using,
Right.
said to me, "You're fucking fucked." And I thought, well, I'm in trouble here because she's bad.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. If she reckons you're fucked, you're really fucked.
So, you know, I jump another 2 cabs. And it's like a movie because we're going up Parramatta Road towards King's Cross and all the, you know, vans are coming towards Leichhardt.
Yeah.
And I get there and, you know, I've got this phone and I'm thinking I just got to get a shot of heroin to work out what I'm going to do. And very pivotal moment. I don't know, moment of clarity, spiritual awakening, call it whatever you want. I saw the undercovers across the road. My girlfriend goes, "I think they've pegged you." Something just overcame me. I said, "I can't do this anymore."
Yeah.
I gave her the wallet, the phone, and kissed her and said, "I'm going to give myself up." And I remember walking across the road and they're looking at me and I'm walking towards it and, you know, I don't know what they thought, but they were you know, and I said, "Oh, you're looking for me?" They went, I gave them my name and they, you know, and I was so defeated that he said, "I don't even need to cuff you, do I?" And I said, "No."
Right.
You know, and they just walked me up to the...
Is that watershed moment in your life? Is that
100%, you know, and they put me... Because at King's Cross, they're not even cells, they're like docks.
Yeah.
And I just remember them putting me in there and I just burst out crying and just thought, fuck, that's over. You know, now I just wanted to go back where there was no responsibility in prison.
Yeah, well, that's you can become institutionalised like
You
that.
can.
I've had a lot of people say to me when I was in the cops that it's easier in there. I get fed. I know what I'm doing. I know people in there. I don't have to worry about where I'm going to get my next dollar. It's
Well, I'd left. You know, that was it. You know, this was the moment I'd waited my whole life for. Yeah. And again, it had just ended in this disaster.
Okay, so I'm really interested in what's going through your mind because I think people that have been listening to this podcast will really get a sense of how desperate and ridiculous the life of an addict is. It's chaos.
Yep.
You've given yourself up.
Yep.
Did you just think, okay, this is going to be my life, just send me back to prison? Because you get your drugs in prison.
I had access to drugs every single. Not that I use them every day, but there's access. You know, it's full of drugs. No, you know, I didn't know what I thought. I just knew I needed to be protected from myself.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and so I ended up back at MRRC, and I remember. Oh, it's embarrassing to even talk about. I remember going to the wing officer and saying, I want to see the AOD, you know, the drug worker, you know, and he said to me, "About time, Robbo," and I was quite offended. You know, I'm the last to catch on always.
Well, yeah, with any addiction, I think the first step is you got to want to give it up, isn't it? Yep. You within yourself have got to want to stop it. So that's probably the first step you needed to take.
That's the first step. The second step is I'm doing laps in 13 pod. At MRRC, you know, I've been back in a couple of weeks. I've got a sweeper's job. I've got a one out with a TV full of cockroaches, and I've got Nikes on, and me and this other guy are hanging shit on this other guy because he's wearing Dunlop volleys. And there's a guy on the other side of him doing laps. So I'm like 36.
Yeah.
Got Nikes and greens on. thinking I'm killing it. We're hanging shit. Because that's what you do in jail.
Yeah.
You have to hang shit on someone else to feel better about yourself. And there's the next guy across from him looked in his 60s, could have been younger.
Yeah.
And I just had this moment where I looked past the guy in the Dunlop volleys and went, fuck, that's it. Is this it?
Yeah.
Is this it?
I've heard people have spent a lot of time in prison when they come to the realisation and see it sad when they see the older prisoners.
Yep.
And it's all exciting when you're a young gangster, I'm going to make a mark, I'm a tough guy, I'm doing this, and there was some glory to it, and, you had the women, you had this, you had that. And then they see the people that have been broken by the jail system and how sad it really is. You look at that old person, you're looking at that old person thinking, fuck, that could be me very soon.
100%. So I've breached my parole, so I'm in for a breach of parole and a new assault charge. And I think the steal from person they call it. They charge me with. But first of all, I don't worry even about the charge. I go up before the parole board, and I've seen the AOD worker, and I'm like, fuck, I'm ready to change. I want to go rehab, and he writes a report and all that, and I go for before the parole board, and the parole board, because I'm at MRC, so I'm in a booth like this. And my lawyer and the parole board are in the city. And I've just got a phone to speak to my lawyer. I speak, I want to go to Who's or wherever it was, and I'm thinking, they're gonna clap me. Like, it's insane, like, and go, look Claude, about time.
Robbo, what a good man. He's finally decided.
So
and believe you.
It comes on. My lawyer does his bit, and they go away for like 90 seconds and come back in. They just changed the parole laws there, so it was automatic 1 year. Yeah. Then
for breaching.
For breaching, automatic.
Yeah.
So they came back and they just said, "Mate, you're not going anywhere. You've been out 5-6 weeks. You're doing a year. We'll see you in a year." I just broke down crying. It saved me.
Yeah.
Because the guard he didn't know what to do, so he didn't come and grab me. But I grabbed the phone again.
Yeah.
And my lawyer was still there, and I just knew I just needed something, and I said to him, "Mate, you've got to get it. You've got to get. I need something. I can't do this again. I need I need it to be different." To this day, I still don't know what he said to them because it was off. The screen was off, and because I was crying, the guard, and then the guard says they're going to come back on. They come back on the screen, and they say to me, "All right. Your lawyer spoke that you're going to still do a year in prison, but we're going to send you to do a rehab in jail called Narranura."
Yeah.
And that was enough.
Okay.
I just thought, fuck, all right, that was hope.
Okay,
that was enough.
This was a program they were going to put you on in prison.
Yep, they were saying, so the last 6 months, because it went for 6 months, I think it did, so you do 6 months, and then the last 6 months of this period, and by the, so as soon as I got that, I speak to my lawyer and plead guilty to the charge, and they don't give me, I don't know what they gave me, 8 months or whatever it was. So, I wasn't going to do any more time.
So what was, you said, yes, that was enough. Is that really the turning point in Claude's life? Is that your moment where you've gone, I'm going to make this work?
It is, but I'll tell you, addiction's such a strong thing because I then go to 15 Wing. They moved me to Long Bay because that's where the program was. So I'm at 15 Wing, not where the program is, pre the program. And I'm using every day. Even though...
So this is the great new model Claude that has pleaded with everyone and that people are moving mountains to put in this program.
Yep. But as you just said before, I was broken. That was pathetic.
Yeah.
So, the start shooting the wire over the fence at Parramatta, getting stabbed. Now I'm swiping my White Ox for Seroquel to take on top of my 150 mils of methadone to fucking wipe me out every night.
Yeah.
And getting up every morning with my... we used to have... they would put a video on in the wing, and you wake up, shh, as a video, and I'd have porridge all over me that I can't remember making. And I'd go, oh, fuck, and I'd see the guy I bought the Seroquel off. I'd go, fuck, I'm not doing that again. At 3 o'clock, I'd be racing to his cell thinking, fuck, I hope he hasn't sold them. And you go, oh, no, you're always coming back.
Yeah, yeah.
And that was, and that was change, but I couldn't stop. And then, I got into Narranura.
Yeah.
And then I made the first serious decision. I just went, all right, because I was on methadone. I've never been allowed to come off methadone in jail because of the risk I pose.
Yep.
So they were going to reduce me from 150 down to 50 before they.
And just to explain for people, I think most people understand methadone, but explain the science behind that.
So they give it to you as a blocker to stop you from using heroin.
Yeah.
So it's the Germans invented it actually, because they couldn't get access to opium because the British ruled India and Afghanistan in World War II. So they needed it because you needed it for all the wounded soldiers and stuff. So it's a long acting. So you drink it once a day and it lasts 24 hours and it takes away the appetite for heroin. Or if I was on that high, you couldn't use any heroin. It wouldn't make any difference. So they started to reduce me, but that was when the first serious, and I believe this was the start of my recovery because I made it, not to anyone else, no one, to myself in my cell. I went, all right, I'm just going to take my methadone as prescribed and nothing else.
Yep.
That's it. Because I couldn't come off it. I knew that. I had to accept my circumstances, but I had to make a commitment, and I did that. And I got through that program. I got down to 50 mils of methadone. And I couldn't get parole because my family lived in a state. My parents were dead, because they changed the parole law, so you needed a suitable address. So you had to do an extra year, and you needed and I couldn't get a suitable address, which I'm so glad, because the only place that I could go to, and again, sliding door moment. At that time, there was 2 places in the world that brought you off methadone.
Yep.
There was Who's in Sydney, and there was one in New York.
Okay.
And I was lucky, so I got paroled to Who's, which was on Cleveland Street, and I went back down to the methadone clinic that I used to go to, and I had to walk down there, and they took me to meetings of Narcotics Anonymous, and they reduced me off heroin.
Yeah.
It was, and there was pivotal moments there because there was about 18 people in the house. I remember sitting out the back. One night, and everyone was whinging at this stage, how shit it was. I thought it was the fucking best thing that had ever happened to me. And it's crazy, the food, because the food in jail is shit, and it's worse now than when I was in there, but it was because we could cook up the food, but I had 3 pillows. And I know that sounds insane, but I spent half of my time in prison. They will give you a pillow slip, but no pillow, and you had to roll up your tracksuit pants and put it inside the pillow slip to sleep on. So I was sitting here thinking,
So little luxuries like that.
And they call me Claude.
Yeah.
Yeah, you usually heard me at Parliament. I started my speech 359-237, my MIN number.
Yeah, you did, and you made a point, and I understood the point, but I think it hit people pretty hard. That's your identification when you're in prison, your MIN number.
And that's mine for life. No one else will ever get that number. Yeah. As I said there, I don't remember my childhood phone number, but my MIN number, and I haven't been in for 17 years. Yeah. Because in prison you can't do anything. Without that, in the moment, that's what you become. That number. So it's very dehumanising. So I was I was on parole, and I was at rehab, and parole had said to me I had to do 6 months in Who's, and I remember before going there I had an argument with one of the staff at Narranura. One of many along the way, and I'm like, fuck, I've just done all this time, fucking 6 months. And I didn't know, but he was a recovering addict too. Yeah. And he said, you're a fucking idiot. Yeah. Claude, you're a fucking idiot. You'll do 2 years for a $50 shot of heroin, but you won't do 6 months to change your life. Yeah. And I didn't have an answer.
When he breaks it down like that, it's a pretty hard thing to come back against.
I just grabbed my tail and walked out, and it was one of those many moments. That rehab I went into, they got me down to the last mill of methadone, and I'm like, I remember going up and seeing the coordinator and going, oh fuck, I don't need to do it. I can jump off now, And again, pivotal moment. He didn't say to me, no, you got to take it. These are the rules. He asked me a question. He said, tell me what's happened every other time you've come off methadone. And I went, fuck, I've used heroin. Yeah. Every time. And he said, mate, we've brought hundreds of people off methadone they've never used again. Yeah. Another moment of humility.
Okay. All these little moments that and it's interesting you say humility, but it's almost acceptance of how low you've hit, and you've got to start listening to people because your path is not going to see you clear.
You look, people go, oh, what happened? What changed? And they want you to say, I had this spiritual. I fucking did what I was told for the first time in my life.
Yeah.
Simple as that.
Yeah.
That's the only thing that changed. And I just was at this point where, as you heard, the decisions I'd made for the last 25 years were fucking terrible.
Yeah, you got no argument from
You know what I
me,
mean? And I
Claude.
just thought, there's nothing these people can do to harm me more than I harm myself.
Yeah.
And then, that guy, he said 6 months to change your life. He was right. That guy who said, stay on the methadone one more week. I've never had methadone again. I've never used a drug since I followed his path. So I started to not only listen to what people said, because I'm a very practical person.
Yeah.
Like, if shit doesn't change, I'm not in. I
want to see it.
I want to get better.
Yeah.
And it started to get better, and, my life started to get better. And, that rehab that I complained about going to for 6 months, and parole was really clear. You leave one day for any reason before your 6 months, you're doing your bop.
Yeah.
And I think I had 20 months left or 18.
Okay, so but it needed to be that rigid.
They knew. They were really strict.
Yeah.
Like, you weren't, you know what I mean?
And I think I get a sense with a lot of addicts when they come and try to pull the wool over people's eyes or whatever, it's people like you, like you've become, and like the people that did this to you. The ones that have been there, done that, know all the bullshit that comes out of your mouth. Because bullshit just comes out of people's mouths when they're addicted to drugs.
How do you know when a junkie's lying? Their lips move.
Yeah, I've heard that before. It's so true.
It is true. And and you believe it. Like, you're that convinced of your own bullshit. So, those things. And the other thing that happened that started to happen in that Narranura program that was pivotal and is what I talk about now is I've never, ever, ever seen anyone punished out of a behaviour. They'll stop it while the behaviour is in place. The only way I've seen people change. What happened in Narranura was the guards, we had to call each other by our first names.
Okay, that's interesting, and let's take the conversation there, because quite often prison is about rules. You break the rules, you get punished. What you're saying is that with this Narranura, that it wasn't about punishment.
No,
it wasn't. It was about helping you along the path.
Yeah, it was so different. That the guards would tell me that when they went to, because they volunteered to work in there, that they would the other guards would scratch their cars, let their tyres down. Some of them would have to stop eating in the cafeteria because they would spit in their burgers.
They were being ostracised. Yep. What are you being? You're soft on these crimps.
Yep. And that program's the most successful program ever run in New South Wales, and then they closed it in 2010.
Right. I think that's something you're beating on about in one of your talks.
Well, I spoke at the closing, and I think the Deputy Commissioner was there, and that's the last time I opened a speech with my MIN number was there.
Yeah.
And I thought that speech at Parliament House was the same gravity.
So you're saying that it was one of the most successful programs?
Yep,
and
most.
It was shut down when?
2010.
Why? Why do you think that?
They said it was too expensive.
Okay. And then it brings us right back to where we started at the start with about the fiscal side of keeping the person in custody.
Well, it's insane. As I spoke about in Parliament, the police budget in New South Wales for the current financial year is $5.2 billion, and the corrective services budget is $2.1 billion. So $7.3 billion. The whole budget for housing and homeless in New South Wales for the current year is $780 million.
That's pretty startling when you break it down that way.
And people don't. It's insane. It really does come down to that. When you imprison someone for a year, and I'm sorry, and this may upset people, but prison offers no value to the community. Now, I'm not soft on crime. There is people that fucking should never get out. We still let them out.
Yep.
If the guys in prison got to them, they wouldn't be dealt with.
I know what you're saying, and prisoners I've spoken to about prison reform all acknowledge there's some people that shouldn't get out. Society need to be protected from.
Yeah, mate, I was at the dentist at Goulburn when they brought in Ivan Milat. From Supermax in the orange suit, and mate, and in Goulburn you didn't speak to the guards after he left because, mate, there was a chill in the air.
Yeah, I actually saw him down in Goulburn, and
I don't know if evil's it, but fuck, I don't
no, there's evil.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And in Goulburn, I was in there with Glover, the granny murderer, and that yard. I think that there was 40 blokes in there, and they killed 65 people.
Yeah.
And I look back now and think, fuck, I was just a kid from the suburbs smoking pot.
Yeah.
How the fuck? How do you get there?
Why am I in with these people?
It was, when I look back, there was, the change took a while, but it really was, I thought, fuck, these people just kill people for killing people.
Yeah.
Like...
That's right.
It's...
And I think the message gets lost. And I think when we've had Mindy Satori speaking too, she's been on the podcast. And a lot of people sort of push back, well, you're trying to help prisoners and they're not distinguishing between the Ivan Milats or the Claude Robinsons. It's just they're all prisoners. This is how they should be treated.
Yep.
What you're saying with this lived experience, and now 17 years out, 17 years clean, 17 years doing good work for society.
Yep.
You're saying we've got to change. We've got to change the system. We've got to look at things differently. Break it down. There, but a lot of people listen to the podcast. What messaging do you want to get?
And I'm very pragmatic. So the pure economics don't make sense. You know what I mean? $7.3 billion, and that doesn't even take into the courts. If you add the courts and all that in, New South Wales alone, probably $10 billion a year. We've got a housing crisis.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The minister was whinging about the other day because, the government, they wanted an extra $1 billion over 2 years. We could take $500 million from that tomorrow and build as many houses as we needed. People don't understand, and it's our taxpayers, so we don't need any more money. We need to spend it differently. And the thing is, why I say jail isn't of value to the communities, and I've spoken at events. I spoke at an event up in Mareebra, North Queensland, a while, probably 8 years ago, and there was the parents of their daughter had been murdered by the husband in domestic violence.
Yep.
And there was a sister. Her sister had been murdered by the boyfriend, and she was a prison guard at the prison where the boyfriend was now incarcerated.
Ooh, yeah.
And I spoke up there at the time with the manager of the Rainbow Lodge, who was one of the few men trained in men's, he had a PhD or a master's in men's change behaviour.
Yep.
And people think, like if I do crime related to drugs when I go to jail, that they make me do drug courses. Yeah. No, they didn't. They didn't make you do anything. If people, and at the bad writers thing, when I was talking a couple of years ago, a lady asked me this question, but the prison population's increased because we're locking up all these people on AVOs. And I said, I've been in prison with them. And I tell you, you know what happens? They're in there with all the other guys on AVOs getting more angry, more violent, and then they come out and their next victim is oblivious to their history. Yeah. So we're actually making them worse because they don't have to do anything.
Okay.
So I think that my experience when I've spoken to the community, they're shocked because they just blindly believe that there was an expectation that if you commit this crime, that when we incarcerate you, that you're being offered or made to address or at least look at, and that's not the reality.
Okay, so breaking down what you're saying, so I haven't misunderstood it. Someone goes in for a crime of violence. You would assume if someone just repeatedly goes back into prison because of violent actions, that when they're in prison, maybe there'll be someone there trying to address that. Yeah, that makes sense, doesn't it? Like if someone, let's break it down, domestic violence, it's such a topical subject. Domestic violent offenders go in there, you'd like to think something's been corrected in what causes them to do that, rather than they're just being put away, cranky, and as you said, sit there and get quite angry, and then come out and, well, I'm back out now, what are you going to do to me?
Yep.
Drug addicts, like how many people are in there with the drug addictions that commit crimes to support their drug addictions, commit crimes because of the stupidity, as you've demonstrated, that your mind plays when you're addicted to drugs. Are they being treated for their drug problem? Are they getting help? Are they going to the core of the problem that's brought them into prison? Now, when we break it down like that, I'm with you. I think most people would assume, well, a system that's spending that much money
what are we
would
doing?
Invest in that. What you're saying here with your T-shirt that says jail is failing, what you're saying here is it's not working.
It's not. You just need to look at the numbers. And these are, Boxer government numbers. The average prison sentence in New South Wales is 8 months.
Yeah.
8 months is the average sentence. So they're not Ivan Milats.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And any one night at the moment, there's about 12,500 people in prison today.
In New South Wales.
In New South Wales. Yet 19,000 people will cycle through every year. 10,000 of those will go to homelessness.
Right. Go from prison to homelessness. Break those figures down again, because that's it shocked me.
There's about 12,500 people
In prison now.
in prison today in New South Wales. This year, about 19,000 people will cycle through those 12,500 beds.
Yep.
And then 10,000 of that 19,000 will be released to homelessness.
Okay, so I don't know. I'm not, a social commentator, but you have people in jail and release them to homelessness. Yep. I'm thinking there's probably a good reason why these people are recycling back into prison.
And not only and I know this because I've met with Minister Jackson, the minister, and had this conversation, and with her, they're being dumped by corrections onto the homeless.
Right.
So the ministry with $2.1 billion is dumping the inmates, because once they come out of prison, not my responsibility, onto the homelessness budget, which has $780 million, and she is burning through money because they give them 3 nights temporary accommodation in these shit hostels in the city that are just crack dens.
Yeah.
And it's insane.
I've always had concerns about that, because if they walk out the prison gate, we've all got the image of the person, see you back here next week, and walk out the gates, and virtually left to their own devices. It's not that far from the truth, is it?
No, it's not.
Yeah.
It's not. We're filming a Four Corners documentary about our service, and one of the men who's going to be the pivotal of that, they filmed him as he came.
And this is the Rainbow Lodge.
Yeah, this is the Rainbow Lodge. So they filmed him coming out of Cooma prison a few weeks ago, and he's been through Rainbow before. And they stopped and had some McDonald's and had a chat with him, and the journalist asked him the question, what would it be the perfect scenario? And he would say that I never leave Rainbow Lodge.
Yeah. Okay.
Because that's the other thing. So he came through us previously, and we housed him in a semi-independent. So he got a unit, but it was miles away. It was down near La Perouse, miles from us. No public transport. He got so isolated. It was so sad. When we went back into the house, he hadn't even set his furniture up, and he just used drugs and gone back to prison.
Yeah, it's sad. I don't. We can all be tough guys and go, oh well, he'd go back where he deserves. It's just sad if you isolate people and.
If you met this guy, he's like someone's grandfather.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, he breaks into people's houses, but he generally tries not to hurt anyone, and he takes drugs because he's in pain. Because I think one of the things that people need to understand about the people that end up in prison, and this is why society and the community needs to take responsibility for. My experience is that 98% of the guys that come through my service have been removed from as children, put into a government service where they're then being sexually abused, and we're talking rape. They're being raped as children. I have one guy, an Aboriginal guy, who told the most horrific story. He gets taken off his mum, sent to an orphanage that's run by a church. The priest starts raping him. His younger brother, who's a couple of years younger, comes. So and this kid, he's 8 years older. Yeah. He gets an agreement. He negotiates with the priest that you can rape me and I won't tell anyone as long as you don't rape my brother.
That breaks your heart, doesn't it?
I'm nearly crying talking about it. He then, the trauma of that is so much that he starts acting out. So they send him off to Minda, and the priest starts raping the brother. Yeah. Until he grows up, starts acting out, and then they send him off to Minda. Then they both end up in jail, and the brother kills himself. Yeah, So what this is?
Well, see, stories like that, I think everyone just takes a black and white attitude on things. When you hear stories like that, you got to have some humanity for what's happening here.
You do, and like I hear the same story, and why I say that is because what we did as a community is we let these children down, and to not take responsibility for it, we then criminalise their trauma response behaviour and send them to boys' homes. And you know that.
Yeah.
You dealt with the killers that went through all the boys' homes. They're a breeding ground.
Yeah, and I've also, with the recent times of what we've done here and time that I've spent in prison doing that podcast series, got an appreciation of the amount of people that, and a person that's a good friend of the podcast, Russell Manser, he made the point that the amount of you want to reduce crime. Look at the trauma these people have suffered, being victims of child sexual abuse, and how that plays out in the future.
You know, all of them, all of them that come across my desk. I think I said it at Parliament House. 78.1% of the men that come through us had engagement in the juvenile justice system.
Yeah.
And I was saying that because they just changed the bail laws. And cause there's two things that the governments do.
Yeah, talk about the bail laws, because there's a lot of anger in Parliament.
Well, it's ridiculous because it's disproportionately going to affect First Nations people. And at the moment, my service, we're not a First Nations only service, but 98% of the people in my service are First Nations, because we got a lot of funding to work with them. They make up 30% of the prison population in New South Wales, but 3% of the general population.
Yeah. Think of those figures. That's disproportionate.
Even scarier, we incarcerate them at the highest. So First Nations people in New South Wales are incarcerated per 100,000 at the greatest rate in the world, 4 times what African Americans are incarcerated, the second most incarcerated people in the world.
Repeat those figures again, because I want people to hear them.
In New South Wales, we incarcerate First Nations people per 100,000 at the highest rate in the world, 4 times the rate that the US incarcerates Black or African Americans, who are the second most incarcerated people in the world.
There's nothing to be proud of.
Well, not only, we should be, as I said in Parliament, we should be disgusted. Like, we've got a Labor government federally and a Labor government state. 6 months ago, they were telling us that, let's vote for a voice.
Yeah.
Yet then they're bringing in laws that are going to disproportionately affect First Nations people.
How do you see the bail laws doing that, having that effect?
I was having this debate with my friend last night, and as an ex-policeman, you may have it differently. The insanity, and it's like the decisions I made, the insanity of government is you don't ask the police how to stop crime. The police solve crime. That's their job. And you don't ask corrections how to stop people coming to jail. It's not their job. Their job is to keep people in jail. And New South Wales do that really well. Like, I said it because, at Parliament, the Deputy Commissioner was there, and I'm not one of these, fucking close all the prisons, defund the police. It's ridiculous. I've worked with the police really closely in some of my jobs. And, as I said and I looked at the Deputy Commissioner, I said, we're imprisoning a guy, so you're having to go and deal with mental health because we don't have a social worker at the hospital. Yeah. And you're not trained for it. Yeah. And we put all this unreal expectation on our police officers and on our prison guards. That's not their job. And we do the same with our school teachers.
Yeah.
And my thing is we do that because we waste all this money imprisoning people. Because I think about it, if you take it right back, because I believe there should be a 5-year moratorium in New South Wales on building any new prisons. If we are seriously serious about doing it different, no, we don't need any more prisons. Get rid of all the private prisons. That's the other thing people don't realise. Australia incarcerates more people, so 25% of our prison population are incarcerated in private prisons. Highest in the world. The US is second in 17%.
I don't know anyone that speaks favourably of the principle of privatising prisons, running a prison for a profit, the people that are in the prisons. I've never heard a good thing said about privatised prisons.
Look, I think they just jumped on the wagon the same as the right-wing wagon, when they sold telecom and all those things and said that, government bureaucracy, it costs us money. It's not efficient. And I think they just jumped on the back of that and said that, we can run prisons more efficiently. But, we call them correction centres. So the idea is we're correcting them. But who runs a business for profit that puts yourself out of business?
Yeah, well, if the corrections private
You know what I mean?
corrections centre do their job well, they won't have a business.
Yeah, like, so it's
Yeah.
so insane. And what we've seen in New South Wales and around the country, with the more private prisons,
Yeah.
all the bail laws have come. So in New
Can I just bring you back on that point to
Yep.
the bail laws? So the
Yep.
new bail laws, when we were at Parliament, there was a lot of huffing and puffing
Yep.
going on about it. Specifically, why do you think that's not going to be a good thing? You said that police shouldn't be saying how to stop crime.
Well, the police have two things: more reasons to arrest people and harsher bail.
Right.
Like, they're the two tools you have as a police officer. More reasons to stop and arrest someone, and more reasons to not let them out on bail.
So if I'm still the cop, there's Claude. You're annoying me. You're out. You're doing something. You've broken a window or whatever. I'm going to arrest you. We're going to refuse bail on you. An unlikely extreme. But you're saying it's something that it makes it easier for us police if people are in jail, because then we don't have to look for them. So I acknowledge what you're saying. Like, police shouldn't be involved in that because it is easier having.
But I have
them
real
inside.
life experience of this. So my previous job, I managed a youth service over the Northern Beaches.
Yep.
And I met with the I think he was the crime commander.
Yeah.
For the Northern Beaches. Amazing guy.
Yep.
Solution focused.
Yeah.
Whatever it takes.
Yep.
And community solutioned, not
Yeah.
there
are some
police
good
can't
ones.
solve.
Yeah,
No,
yeah,
he was.
yeah.
I've met lots of good ones.
Yeah.
So there was at this stage, and people didn't know. People went, "Oh, it's the Northern Beaches," but the highest uptake of people in juvenile detention or prison in New South Wales was from the Northern Beaches.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Something.
So, and there was lots of these kids, so I met with him and said, this is a problem. What can we do? And he said to me, on any Saturday night on the Northern Beaches at any one time, I got 5 cars babysitting, because people don't realise, he said, as soon as I have an interaction with a child under 16, I become
responsible.
And I can't let them go until I hand them over to a responsible person. So he said, I've got 8 cars on the beaches, and 5 of them, so real crimes, the things that we want police to come to, they can't get to them because of these kids. So, we came up with this thing called Beach Reach, where we went out we had a car with youth workers, and they would call us up and go, we've got these kids, we'd ring mum, because the other thing we found was, they said to us, you ring mum and dad, and on the Northern Beaches, they're smashed. So they can't come and pick up little Johnny.
Yeah.
So they were able to, the police could, ring the parents and go, hey, tell them Money's here, the youth workers.
Bring your child home.
And I tell you, and this is why I say that police don't solve crime, because he was this good, I can't think of his name, he had a Greek name, but he said to me, I know the moment I put a child in a car, even to take them home to their parents, I changed their relationship to the police instantly, forever.
Yeah.
And I just went, wow.
Okay. Well, he's thinking.
You know what I mean? So he said, if I can have you guys who not only take them home so I don't have to put them in a police car, then we have a therapeutic conversation. We can go, well, what's going on? Because while you're out, something's going on at home. Yeah. And give them a card. And from that grew that we went into Cromer High School, and we would say, look, where do you go high school? We're here on a Tuesday. You just tell the teacher and we'll call you out in class. No one will know.
Yeah.
So there is solutions.
Yeah.
And because he knew that if we stop these kids now, we're working with these kids now. He's not dealing with them in 5 years when they're committing much more serious crimes.
Well, all the things that you're raising, it's sort of, I'll say, thinking out of the square to a degree. It's not that just, okay, this happens and just pushing against each other the whole time. It's thinking, if it's not working, why aren't we changing it? And get back to your T-shirt, jailing's failing.
Yeah.
If the idea of putting people into jail, correctional centre, as you say, as a correctional centre. So your behaviour is going to be corrected, and then when you come out into society, you're going to integrate back into society.
You're going to be better.
But all the bad things about the prison system that I hear from you and when I talk to Mindy, that's not what it's doing. And the high rate of recidivism.
It's huge.
It's ridiculous across the country.
Within 2 years, most people are back in prison, and they're not all bad. We've just been funded by the Paul Ramsey Foundation to take our Wallama First Nations programs into John Moroney Prison.
Right.
And, Jason Hodges is the governor out there, and he thinks outside the box.
Yeah.
He's got all these guys on remand, and he's got remand DV, remand addictions, remand aggressions, and I was at a meeting with him a little while back, a couple of months ago, when we're, finalising what we were going to do, and he said, we've had the first person on remand go back before the judge, and because we'd offered them a different solution and programs, the judge didn't have to send him to prison. He could sentence a person to rehab.
Yeah, because when they're on remand, they traditionally don't get access to...
They don't get access to anything.
And that's something that I hadn't even thought about, but one ex-prisoner raised it, or some discussion I'm having, I think it was here, that when you're on remand, and you can be on remand for a very long time, the court system is not in a rush. You could be there for years and you don't have access to all these things.
Well, the scary thing is, today there's 12,500 people in prison today. Yeah. 5,000 of them are on remand. 40% of the population in prison.
I didn't realise
There's no presumption of innocence. That's a fallacy, because when we brought in the private prisons, we had to change the bail laws because we needed to keep them in business.
Yeah.
And that's what's happened. And we, as a society, we are being ripped off.
Run those figures past me again. You keep hitting me with these figures. I'm trying to process it.
Today there's about 12,500 people in prison, and about 5,000 of those are on remand. I think it's 39.3% of the people in prison in New South Wales are on remand, so not found guilty or charged.
I wouldn't have thought that. Naively, I wouldn't have thought that. And
I even brought it written down.
Oh, right, you've got the notes. Okay, well, it's proof.
Yeah, this is available data to the government, to everyone. No, I'm not making these figures up.
I accept what you're saying, but I'm saying from a cop's point of view, a career cop, I never thought about that. Like, I thought it would have been a much smaller percentage on remand.
And it's changed now because you've got, John Moroney and people like Justin Hodges. Yeah. So, as I said, with the police, corrections is the same. There's some good people trying to do things different, and, to allow us, and that's taken the Deputy Commissioner Luke Grant's approval too. So there is people.
Oh, look, I did that Breaking Badness in Macquarie Correctional Centre. I was blown away by what I saw there. Like good people in corrective services trying to make a difference.
No, there is, but you're talking about
it's changing. There's a culture that you're trying to change,
and it's really difficult. You're highly unionised, and it's an old school thing. But there is, and we're Rainbow with our Aboriginal partners, Gamarata Indigenous Resources in Wimpitcher, to be able to the chance to go out there and run this. And I had an amazing experience. I took Ivan Clark, who runs our Healing the Warrior program from Wimpitcher. We took out some guys who were going to run out there. All ex-criminals. Yeah. All Aboriginal. Yeah. And, we went out to the jail and we came in and, because you have ideas. Like, I have an idea and I thought this is the environment. I'd met Jason. They were running some programs. A lot of the Wallama guys out there, I knew that 30% of the people in John Moroney are Aboriginal, I thought this is the place, and I thought it was actually the DPP through the Wallama program was the one who said to me, because he met Ivan and the programs and started to see the impact, and he said, this would be great in jail. Like the guy, they should be doing this before they even come for bail.
Right.
And
then get makes sense.
It? So, but I had this idea, but you don't know it's going to work. And then I took them out there to tour the jail and to be shown around and made the impact, like the guys, the conversations they had, because 3 hours we toured the jail for. Yeah. 3 hours. And I remember Ivan said to me, 3 hours, and we sat down with Jason Hodges, the governor, out there for half an hour. And, we had to go and have lunch because the guys were so, like I had, one guy, Paul Bird, who spent 25 years in jail, was in tears. Yeah. At the impact. And you can't as you said, you can't bullshit these guys. No. These guys are tough guys, but, Paul Birdie's been like me, nearly 17 years. All these guys, Ivan, his story, he was taken from his mother, institutionalised, raped. Now he's one of the foremost speakers on Aboriginal men's change programs. And his thing is, and this goes back to why I say, especially with the prevalence of the conversations around domestic violence, women can't fix men.
Yeah.
And we as a community need to accept that. And it's very difficult, and
And like people will shout you down for that, going, "Oh, well, maybe women should be the ones fixing men." But I understand what you're saying.
do we want justice or do we want revenge?
Yeah.
That's the question I ask.
Obviously, justice is
Of course, because if we want revenge, we end up with two lots of trauma.
Yeah.
And as we've talked about, those people, very few. I don't even. It'd be less than 0.5% of people in prison in Australia don't get released.
Yeah.
So they're all coming out.
And that's a point that I know when I was talking about what they were doing in Macquarie, and I was sort of thinking, okay, people are going to push back on this. Are we getting soft? They're in jail for a reason. They've done something bad. They're in there for a reason. Make them break rocks and eat bread. Who cares? They're prisoners. And I was worried that am I going soft? I've been out of the cops. Am I looking at this through the wrong lens? I spoke to Ken Marslew, whose son was murdered, and a terrible situation, armed robbery at a Pizza Hut, and his son was shot and killed. He was working there.
Yep.
Ken was angry. Ken was angry when it happened. The people were responsible for it were caught, and he was pushing, let's get tough on crime, blah, blah, blah. He's changed his tune now, and I'm sure you've crossed paths with him over the years. He's a good friend of Mindy's. And I spoke to him. I said, Ken, your thought on it, your thoughts. Like you have the right to be angry. Your son has been murdered. You've felt the full pain of what crime can do to a family. And he said, I was angry. I was angry, and I'm still angry today, but I'm not going to let the anger destroy me. And I say this, Gary, that if people are saying, well, you're just getting soft on crime, if we're reducing crime, we're reducing victims. And
couldn't agree.
The moment he said that, I'm thinking, yeah, well, sometimes the simplest solution is the most obvious, and that's what he's saying. We're not getting soft on crime. We're getting smart on crime. Yeah. And if you want to protect victims, reduce crime and you protect victims. So
100%. I couldn't agree. No, and that's why I say, do you want justice or do you want revenge?
Yeah.
Because I think we get them mixed up. Because, do you want to punish, and don't get me wrong, victims of crime have every right, and I imagine, the families of victims of crime, have every right to be angry, to have all the normal human emotions. We're not saying that, but do they, if you're, and this is what I said to these people, up in Mareeba, I said, your daughter's been murdered. There's nothing we can do to bring her back.
Yeah.
But do you want that person to be released and put another family through what you've gone through?
Yeah.
Or do you want to have a system where that person is held accountable, but they're also supported to heal from their trauma and to address their behaviours? So at least when they get out, we're giving ourselves, the community, a much better chance that they're not going to perpetrate onto the next victim.
Yeah, and it's hard. It's hard to think through that. But when you break it down, you strip all the emotion away and all that, it is the right thing to do.
I think it is.
Yeah.
I was reading this thing a little while ago. The safest communities have the least amount of police.
Yeah, well...
You know what I mean?
Yeah, that makes sense.
And I remember a while ago...
I've heard some informed police, some senior police say, well, we can't arrest our way out of the situation. No, and I like that attitude, because sometimes the pub talk is, well, stuff it, we'll put more police. When the state elections, when I was in the cops, I used to hate it when there was a law and order issue, and what they'd say, well, we're going to increase the police. And, look, they announced before the election we've increased 500 new police. Yep. Nothing about the quality of the 500 that they've signed up. We'll just give you numbers, and then they'll cause problems for the rest of their career until they retire for some bizarre reason. That's not the way to reduce crime. I always thought, I said this throughout my police career, and people thought it was a little bit strange when, because people think a cop, they're going to come up to me and go, let's get tough on, let's get more police. And I go, I would be putting the money, if we want to reduce crime, into education. Yep,
100%.
I thought that was the way to go.
Well, can you? That's what I started on it before. Can you imagine? The average class now is 26, 28. If you reduce the spend on crime, on police and prisons, and you put that into education, and the teacher's got 20 kids, those kids that
get more one-on-one.
They don't slip through.
Yeah.
They can get, if we catch them there, we can change the whole trajectory of, and I'll tell you this. So I did some quick mathematics. So, 20 years engaged in the criminal justice system, I reckon 5 million. That's the cost to the community that I cost. 5 million. To send someone to treatment is about $24,000.
Yeah.
And
I'm laughing because when you break it down like that,
it's insane. I say to people, the only bed I can guarantee you is a prison bed. Yeah. I can't guarantee you tonight a bed in a mental health hospital. Yeah. I can't even guarantee you a bed in a hospital. I can't guarantee you a bed at a domestic violence refuge.
That's where we should be able to, isn't it?
The system's upside down. Yeah. The only bed, and again, and this is why, I think it's easy for people to blame the police and corrections. The politicians make the laws that those two institutions implement. Yeah. At the end of the day.
I think there needs to be accountability.
Yeah, and there isn't. They just go, it's the police, or we got all this sort of stuff. But as you said, the war on drugs doesn't work. And now we've got a war on domestic violence. Yeah. And it's like, have we not, you heard how stupid I was.
Yeah.
It's, the insanity's doing the same thing and thinking we're going to get a different outcome. Yeah. And we're doing, I say to people...
and like the war on domestic violence, and it's a complex one, it's an emotional one, it's scary what's happened, and we see the results of it.
Yep.
But let's break down what we're saying here, choosing our words carefully. Okay, we're going to get tough on domestic violence. You're at home, you say something, the cops are going to come and lock you up. They're going to get more powers for domestic violence, lock you up. You get put in a cell, you're an angry person, nothing to address what's caused the anger, you're just getting more and more angry, and then you get let out. And have you changed? No, you haven't changed, you're just angry.
100%.
So let's address the problem.
And we've taken away the discretionary power of our police and our courts. I was on the board at Rainbow Lodge for 8 years, and I sat on there with a great man. He's no longer here, Judge Joe Moore. Yeah. And, he said to me, two proud things, Claude, I'm the most appealed judge in the district court. Yeah. He said, I'm proud of that. Yeah. And he said, the New South Wales Crime Act clearly states that imprisonment is the last option, not the first.
Okay. And so he held on to that.
Yeah. And he also said to me, as a judge, he said, the problem is with mandatory sentencing. He says, when the guy comes to me first time, he needs to go to jail. When he comes the second time, he needs. But the third time, I go, I can't send him to rehab because he's 3 times he's mandatory got to go to jail. Yeah. I lose the he said, I've spent my life practicing and learning law. Like, I'm a judge. We put them in these positions because they're trusted. Yeah. So we need to give them the discretionary power to make the decisions.
Look, Claude, I agree with you. I never, and a career as a policeman, locking people up, I never liked that mandatory sentencing. No. To me, it didn't fit because every crime I did, there was some different factor.
There's a nuance.
Yeah.
We work with people, whether they're good or bad.
Yeah, that's right. But the mandatory sentence, it never, I always, and I know the pub test is people going, yeah, of course, they should get 10 years.
It's electioneering. Yeah. It's not based on evidence and it doesn't help anyone, so that thing with the two things with the police. When I was doing that thing on the northern beaches, I watched and don't get me wrong, like anything, there's bad police, but I watched these police officers stabbed. Yep. On the body cam footage at Central Station. Yeah. And as I was watching it, I'm going, shoot, I would have shot the guy 3 times. Yeah. And the officer didn't, and he got stabbed. Yeah. Thankfully, he didn't die. Yeah. But, and I thought, fuck, and it's that thing, you hear the bad stuff, but you don't hear the good stuff. We just, I'll tell you a great story. So one of the things we do is we transport Aboriginal people from treatment centres around New South Wales to from custody to treatment centre. Yep. And we do it with our Aboriginal peer workers and that. So one of my Aboriginal peer workers who's lived the experience, good old Raymond, say hello to him, finished his parole just the other day. He did the welcome to country at Parliament.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So he's transporting this guy from, I think he was going from Kempsey, Mid-North Coast Prison to Arana Haven outside Walgett. Yep. 40 k's, 50 k's out of Walgett, he hits a wild pig. There's no reception out there. The guy's on Supreme Court bail, has to be at this treatment centre. He knows because it's his country. He's been out there. He goes, fuck, I've got to ring the police. No one else is coming.
Yeah.
We're in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
He rings, they gets put through to the sergeant at Walgett, tells him the situation. They send a car out. They pick him up. He explains, this guy's like 6 hours out of jail, shitting him, going, and Raymond's going, no, like this, like when they come, they're coming to help.
Yeah.
Like, don't worry, this is, and the sergeant organised, they picked him up and they drove them to that rehab, so he got to that rehab within his bail.
And that action changes the view, or
I shouldn't say this, but I will.
Yeah.
Raymond called me the other day. I don't know why. The van, our work van, had run out.
Yeah.
He had 5 guys. He was one day off finishing his parole. He had 6 Aboriginal men in a brand new car.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but there is racial profiling. There wasn't this time. So it came up, the cameras read the number plates. It came up. There was no rego. He pulled Raymond over. Raymond explained what he was doing.
Yeah.
And he said, I'll ring my boss. And I spoke to him.
Yeah.
And I don't know where, and he didn't fine us or anything. And I was able to get on within 15 minutes and get it registered. Now, I don't know whether he made a conscious decision or not, but those guys in that car, their experience of policing isn't that.
Yeah.
It's the same as the guy who come and picked up the guys, with the pig.
Yeah, yeah.
But the impact they have on, like the guys come back and they're talking about, it didn't.
He was a cool cop. He was a cool cop. Yeah.
Well, he saw, Raymond said, this is what we're doing. The car's registered here. And I didn't have that conversation, but I imagine he went, fuck, this is an opportunity. I need to do the right thing.
Yeah.
That's a discretionary.
Yeah. Good policing, you need discretionary powers.
Yes.
If you don't, the problems can go bad. Look, I'm conscious of the time. We are running out of time. I'm really enjoying the discussion. I just want you to give me a quick rundown on Rainbow Lodge, because you're a manager there and they've been doing good work for a long time. So
yep, they have. So Rainbow Lodge, this is our 60th year, so we are now the longest continuous running halfway house in the world.
Yep.
There was one in Canada, unfortunately didn't survive COVID. So we've been open 24 hours a day for 60 years. So we work with men leaving a term of incarceration. Currently, we're partnered in a program called the Wallama List Trial in the District Court of New South Wales. It's like a circle sentencing type thing where... because most of the diversionary programs have been in the lower court, so this is the first one for more serious offences. And this is another, Justice Yaya had this vision, because this is another thing where our laws have got more punitive. So these guys have been charged in indictable, so they don't ever get a chance
for
merit, drug court, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we're part of that. So, we've got 2 beds there. So we have 8 beds funded. And there's some figures here. So I'm the largest provider of post-incarceration support for men in New South Wales, and I have 8 beds for 32 places for the 19,000 people leaving.
It's not much, is it?
No.
Not much.
And I have another 2 beds funded by the Paul Ramsay Foundation for First Nations men engaged in the Wallama program, and they funded us.
And this is a place where they get released from prison, they can go.
They come and we run programs, drug and alcohol, living skills. In the last year and a half, we've gone. So 3 years ago, we were at 40% First Nations. Last year, we were 68. Currently, we're 97.1.
Right, okay.
Because of the programs, we've been able to use this funding to bring Ivan Clark in and Gamarada, people like Raymond, lived experience guys, one of the guys who's come through the Wallama list now does peer work. So when we go and pick up the Wallama guys and transport them, there's an Aboriginal guy who's on it.
And how much difference that makes.
The pride in him. So, Rainbow is doing, but we need, half a dozen rainbows, and there's, as Mindy said, I think in her report, there's a list of 100 services doing great work. So I, if there's anything I have to say is the money we spend now is wasted. We don't need any more data, research or anything. We know what works. We know what doesn't work. Yep. What we need, as I said in Parliament, is the political will to implement it.
Okay, that's a very important message, isn't it?
It is.
All the research has been done. We know what the solution is.
Yeah, we don't need any more committees, no more royal commissions.
Yeah.
We actually need the political will to go, we're not going to build any more prisons, as I said at Parliament, for 5 years. We're going to divert that funding into diversionary programs pre and post. And as I said at Parliament, if in 5 years it hasn't worked, lock them up and,
Yeah.
I'll go and do something else.
Well, what a novel idea! Crack down on law and order and go down that path instead of increasing jails, increasing police, and making mandatory sentencing. Look at it a little bit differently.
Yeah.
If it hasn't worked, let's change it.
And a clear thing, because I never answered your question about the new bail laws, because I don't think what people understand. So the new bail laws were based on, in some of the rural communities, of rising crime, but they were specific to break-in enters and car theft.
Okay, so
Right.
it's going to catch a certain
It's-
type.
yeah.
Yep.
But we know, and this is the outrage,
Yeah.
that it's going to disproportionately affect First Nations
Yeah.
because they make up about 80% of the juvenile,
in the country towns,
and especially in the country towns
Yeah.
and in the juvenile centres. And we know that the evidence tells us that putting people into custody, as I said,
Yep.
78.1% of the men in my service were all in the juvenile justice system.
Yeah.
We know it's the apprenticeship and sets them up for a lifetime of adult incarceration.
Yeah.
But it's like, and it's politics for re-election. It's politics of fear. The Premier made that decision based on fear because a part of the community was outraged, and it was on, a current affair or, one of those shock jocks who, want to talk about the fear and all that. But it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't solve the problem.
It's a shame we can't look at it as bipartisan, and
Yeah.
it would make sense. Yeah, we're all on board. This is
Do we want safer communities?
Yeah.
It is a community, and you've been in the police, and the decent police I speak to go. We can't arrest our way out of drugs or domestic.
Yeah.
Like, it's a community solution.
Yeah, and I like it when police look at it that way. There's other ways of dealing with things.
Yep.
Look, I just want to say thanks so much for what you've done. Congratulations on how you've turned your life around. I sit here and laugh at some of your life decisions in let's call it part one.
Yeah,
of,
they're concerning.
Yeah, they are very concerning.
Yep.
Part one, who's some of the decisions you make, but I think you've articulated very well on what happens when you get in the system. You become a drug addict. You become dependent. You make stupid decisions. But what I find most interesting about our chat is the way that you're looking at solutions to problems that affect all of us. It's always in our face. Law and order, crime. Everything's in our face about that. Money, homelessness, that type of thing. And you're looking at solutions. And I just like to sum up the bit as well that you're saying we don't need to review this again. We don't need more committees. We don't need that. We know what the solution is. Let's have the balls to do it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No worries.
Okay. Good
Been
stuff.
a pleasure. Thanks, Gary.
Thanks very much. Well, Claude's an interesting character. He really gave something that I was surprised I got. I thought it was going to take a little bit different direction, but really gave an insight into what goes through the mind of an addict. And the part one, the chaos of his life, the decisions that he was making. And look, he comes across as a nice person, but he's just making ridiculous decisions. And how driven he was because of his drug addiction. Second part, I found very interesting because he was talking about alternatives to the way that we go about keeping people in custody. And I think he made some really valid points, and I hope people listen to it because I think some of the points he's make are very worthwhile.